Welcome to the Movie Zone. Today we are recapping the 2016 American war movie 13 Hours, based on a true story. This movie tells the tale of 6 brave men who fought against a wave of hundreds of terrorists. As usual, spoilers ahead, so be ready. Let's begin. There were over 200 American outposts in Libya until 2012. Following the 2011 civil war, the deposition and execution of dictator Muammar Gaddafi, Benghazi became one of the most violent places in the world. The United States are forced to pull their outpost out of there, all except for one called the Annex, which is protected by a team of CIA contractors, the Global Response Staff, GRS. Jack Silva, a retired SEAL and a new recruit of the GRS services, arrives at Benghazi airport and is picked up by his best friend Tyrone. Tyrone is the leader of the GRS. Here in Benghazi, they are responsible for the protection of the secret CIA outpost called the Annex. On their way there, Tyrone explains how the whole country now had 2 factions of rebels who had acquired all of Gaddafi's weapons. The CIA outpost and they as well are responsible to get those weapons off the black market. They are coordinating with one of the rebel groups called the February 17th Martyrs to help them with this task. On the way to the Annex, the two are apprehended by some rebels who obviously don't belong to the Feb 17 Martyrs. The group threatens them to get off the vehicle, but Tyrone somehow manages to convince the rebels to let them go. But this makes Jack realize just what they are up against. The Annex is located in a building of an ex-Libya minister who ran away from the country during the rebellion and leased the building to the CIA, aka the Annex. The workers in the Annex are almost all CIA associates who have highly classified missions going on, and the GRS was tasked to protect them from any harm. Naturally, the highly educated CIA personnel have little empathy towards the GRS. Tyrone takes Jack to the facility where the GRS were stationed and introduces him to the other members of the team, Tig, Chris, Boone, and Oz. They also have a translator named Amhal to help them with buying the stolen weapons back from the black market. Over the next few days, Jack gets to be part of the undercover missions alongside the CIA agents and realizes with just how much disrespect they treated the GRS. Regardless, he does the job that he is assigned with. After finishing the job, the GRS face another major issue. The ambassador assigned for Libya by the USA, J. Christopher Stevens, was visiting Benghazi. The man, however, wasn't coming with a lot of backup, only his personal guards. The GRS are to drive the ambassador around while he stays there and make sure that he is safe. So, the day before the ambassador arrives, the entire GRS team goes to visit the area that the man will be staying in. The group gets acquainted with the ambassador's personal guards, Scott and Dave and Agent Alec, who was assisting them. The 2 personal guards show the GRS men around. The ambassador's residence is a far more luxurious place than the GRS headquarters. Scott and Dave seem pretty confident that they can protect the ambassador despite the odds. The GRS men, however, immediately notice the several flaws in the compound defenses. Chris points out how 5 men could never defend such a large outpost. The people they had hired at the front gate were almost useless, so if anything goes south, they would be in a hell of a lot of trouble. The next day, before the ambassador's arrival, the group set out on their normal duty of buying back the weapons from the black market. After finishing up with the heated transaction, the group heads back to the Annex, where the ambassador gives a rousing speech about passion, hope, and peace. The GRS then drive the ambassador to a nearby press meet where he is supposed to address a few of the national press members. The event was supposed to be low profile, but just as the ambassador begins to answer the questions, hundreds of local press people barge in the compound. All of the GRS members are on edge by this sudden occurrence, but they manage to keep it together. Their troubles, however, had only just started. With the arrival of the ambassador comes a lot of facilities, including better Wi-Fi. The ambassador calls in for a tech guy named Sean, who is called to create secure communications for the ambassador. Sean also goes on to create a better Wi-Fi connection back at the GRS headquarters as well. After the Wi-Fi connection is improved, the whole GRS crew gets to have a chat with their family back at home. While before they had to go deep into the CIA office region to get a good Wi-Fi connection, now they could call their families from the room itself. Jack calls his wife and kids and finds out that his wife is pregnant with their third kid. He cannot hold back his happiness at the news and feels a little guilty for leaving them and coming here to fight a war he didn't even care about. Chris talks with his fiancée, and Tyrone also gets to connect with his newborn son. The guys even enjoy watching movies and share some time amongst themselves. Over the next couple of days, the ambassador starts noticing suspicious men around the compound of his residence taking pictures and notifies his staff, but there is little they can do. The following day, there is unrest all over Libya over a short movie which had apparently insulted the Prophet Muhammad, and the whole country was protesting against banning the movie. Soon, gunshots are heard outside the ambassador's compound. A large group of rebels has gathered around the premises and are shooting down everyone and everything that comes before them. The rebel group easily make it past the local guards hired outside and quickly start making their way inside the governor's residence. Scott and his crew notice this immediately and tell the governor and Sean to hide in the safe house while they deal with the situation. Alec analyzes the situation from a locked-in room and witnesses 40 men gathering around them. Realizing that this was too big a force for them to deal with alone, Scott calls for backup with the GRS. Immediately after the GRS receive the call, they get ready to head to the ambassador's residence for backup. Jack records a message for his wife and children before he gets ready. A goodbye message perhaps, but he doesn't send it just yet. The CIA chief of the annex, however, does not let the men leave. He believes that they would be revealing the location of the annex if they left and wants them to stay back. They will be the last resort and only leave as a final option for backup. Tyrone and the others are frustrated, but have no choice but to follow orders. With no sign of the GRS, Scott takes the ambassador and Sean inside the safe house and locks them in, while Dave takes refuge in a freezer. The rebels try and barge in the safe house at first, but the doors are bulletproof and they don't find any way to get in, so they get themselves huge gallons of diesel and burn down the entire house. The fire starts to grow larger and smoke starts filling the entire house. In all the chaos, the ambassador, Sean, and Scott get separated within the smoke-filled house. The rebel forces also start dissipating into the city. Jack sees a huge fire rising at the governor's place and notifies Tyrone of the situation. Tyrone can take it no longer. If they didn't do anything now, there would be no one left to save. The man orders his crew to head for the ambassador's residence, despite the chief's protest. The group needs to shoot down several of the rebels gathered in the streets before separating into two groups. Jack, Tyrone, and Tig are in one group, who barge in through the front door alongside some of the Feb 17 members, while Chris and Nas get hold of Amhal and head in through the back door. Jack and Tyrone reach the burning residence first and find a distraught Scott outside. He tells them that he was separated with the ambassador. Jack and Tyrone immediately head inside in hopes of finding the ambassador, but they almost get caught up in the fire themselves. After some moments of searching, Tyrone concludes that no one could have survived such a fire. They do, however, stumble upon the dead body of Sean. He had died after inhaling too much smoke. Jack and Tyrone drag the body outside and place it in their car. As they do so, Scott watches in disbelief and horror. Chris and Oz came around the back as well, accompanied by two young members of the Feb 17 crew. The night is only getting longer and the crew is getting more and more nervier. Chris especially doesn't trust anyone around him that isn't an American. The group once again reunites at the front of the building and also manages to get a hold of Alec and Dave. They get the personal guards Alec, Dave, and Scott to get in a car and drive back to the annex while they follow. Jack specifically orders Scott to take a left after they leave the premises, but a distraught Scott, who is obviously shook, takes a right. The GRS realized that the rebels were once again regrouping and would be heading their way. The annex was probably their next target, so the group rushed back to the annex again. Inside the annex, the chief calls in all the agents and asks them to contact their support inside the country and ask for help. He also assigns them to ask help from the US military forces. Since there are no army regiments nearby Libya, the CIA are informed that it will be a while before they receive any form of formal help from the US military. Glenn Bob Doherty, another GRS force member, receives word of this and heads to the location with a small group of men and two US military Delta soldiers. Scott and the group, having taken the wrong turn, find themselves surrounded by the enemy rebel force. They do not give in, however, and drive through the rebels' barricades. They engage the rebels in a high-speed pursuit, but just as they reach the annex, the rebels let them leave, almost as if they already knew where they were going. Tyrone, Jack, and the other GRS forces reach there as well. The chief is extremely angry at the men for disobeying orders, but Tyrone humbles the man, letting him know of the situation around him. This is no longer a secret spy mission. This is war. Tyrone takes command of the situation and orders the CIA agents to hide inside and continue their call for support while the GRS, along with Dave, spread around the 5 buildings and deter the rebel forces that would undoubtedly arrive there soon. The group gathers all the ammo present in the area and makes groups of 2. Each group gets their own guns and ammo, along with night vision glasses. Soon, the rebel forces arrive. The first wave is filled with rebels firing aimlessly and throwing bombs in the compound. They were obviously meant to reveal the location of the GRS soldiers. Jack and the others shoot down the rebels one by one and constantly switch positions to keep their locations hidden. The second wave starts brewing again. Jack quickly goes back into the facility and sends the message he recorded previously, realizing that this would end with either him or the rebels dead. The rebel forces were unlikely to give up. To add to their misery, they are also told that the ambassador was dead. The cause of death? Inhaling excess smoke, just like Sean. The battle continues throughout the night with the second wave bringing in rebels with literal bombs. The GRS is still able to deter the rebels, but since they have now arrived from all corners, their location is revealed. Regardless, they fight throughout the night with Sleep and the rebels. Dawn arrives with a promise of hope. Glenn and his forces, who had been lost for most of the night, arrive at their gates with much needed backup. They are few in number, but they would prove handy in holding back the rebels, who show no signs of stopping. When the morning finally comes, the whole area is echoed with the Muslim prayers. There is peace for once. Until a bomb with pinpoint accuracy is fired at the buildings from somewhere in the city. The bomb lands in Building A, which was being guarded by Roan and Oz. The bomb injures Oz, and as Tyrone heads to save him, another bomb lands right before him, rendering him dead. A couple more bombs land right inside the annex premises, badly injuring Dave as well. The bombing then stops, but the GRS forces are now in really bad condition. They are vulnerable and cannot take any more fighting. Just then, a large group of rebel forces arrive at the main gate, ready to enter and guns blazing. Chris aims his gun at the men, with little hope, when suddenly, the man gives him the signal of peace. Chris cries with relief as the Libyan forces gather the Americans and bring them to an airfield. Before heading back, Jack calls his family again and assures them that he was fine and everything they are seeing in the news is in the past. 28 Americans were rescued that day. Libya was declared a failed state and is now a stronghold for ISIS. 10 days after the attack, thousands of Libyan civilians gathered to mourn Ambassador Stevens. The chief and surviving members of GRS received medals in a private ceremony, and the men subsequently retired to be with their families. What do you think about this gripping movie? Tell us in the comments below. Be sure to like and subscribe. See you next time!